The first time that your Tolan brings up something that you told it the previous day, that's a moment at which people really are like, whoa. I think people start to kind of get that, like, this thing is listening to them, it cares, and it will actually use the information that you're telling it to either help you or even just power more interesting conversations to come. The reaction was amazing. People ended up downloading and chatting with their Tolans for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, in sessions. And it was like immediately like, oh, wow, okay, we're going from like, not sure if this is clicking with people to like, okay, this is actually going to be a very expensive service for us to run. The other thing I'd say is that the costs of this stuff are coming down dramatically, relatively quickly. Like even just for us, since we were in early beta, the cost for us to service a user have come down like really significantly, like well over 50% in a couple of months.
Welcome to Subversive, a podcast dedicated to sharing stories from the best consumer subscription apps in the world. We'll bring you lessons for how to grow your consumer subscription business, including insights and inflection points that led to exponential growth from leaders at category-defining companies and innovative startups. Let's get into the show. My guest today is Ajay Mehta, the co-founder and president of Portola, whose first app, called Tolan, offers users an AI companion that rapidly went viral after launching in early 2025. In this episode, I talked to Ajay about the origin story behind Tolan, about how it cracked TikTok in order to catch on among Gen Z women, and about how it's adding social features to its product and transitioning to a freemium business model to double down on its viral organic growth strategy. All right, welcome, Ajay, to the Subversive podcast. Super excited to have you on today. I've gotten to know you and the Tolan product a bit over the last couple months, but really excited to get the inside story today. So before we jump into Tolan, which is this sort of viral AI companion app that's taken the world by storm over the last year and a half, would love to just hear a little bit more about you and your background as a serial entrepreneur and kind of what led up to your latest adventure with Tolan.
Sure thing. And hey, Phil, thanks for having me. Thanks for having us. Yeah. So my background is as a consumer product entrepreneur, as you noted. Been doing it since college, maybe even slightly before college. Started a couple of companies in the social networking space, worked at a couple of FinTech companies, kind of all over the map in Silicon Valley through the kind of 2010s. The common thread between all of them is that they were all kind of consumer first experiences. That's what gets me excited, is building awesome stuff for everyday people. Even dipped my toes in the physical product world for several years. So the most recent projects right before Tolan were two e-commerce companies, Birthdate Co and Therapy Notebooks, which did over 50 million in revenue since we launched them in 2019 and 2020. That was a super fun experience, kind of taking me away from apps and software for a bit, but was very excited to return back to it in what ended up becoming Tolan. And the really quick genesis of Tolan for myself and my two co-founders, Quentin and Evan, they had a fintech company that exited. I was sort of managing a then profitable couple of e-com businesses, and we were just really kind of lit up over the generative AI revolution, I guess you could say, right after the ChatGPT moment and after Mid-Journey. So this is probably late 2022, early 2023. Feeling like as a consumer product entrepreneur, it was sort of the most exciting time to build something that we had sort of for our whole careers. The opportunity to build a consumer product that truly feels new. Anyone working in consumer knows that it kind of felt a little bit static for maybe almost a decade there, without like a ton of new platforms and new technologies since mobile. So it was just a very exciting time to be building something. We wanted to build something that was going to be a very creative application of the new sort of capabilities that these models provided, and that's what became Tolan.
Well, I can certainly resonate with that. I'm somebody who spent my entire career in consumer tech, and getting to work on products that directly impact people's lives, hopefully in a positive way, is really energizing and exciting, particularly when there's this new technological wave that opens up all sorts of new opportunities. And so the last big one was mobile. Now we have AI. And so you mentioned it was around 2022, 2023 when you teamed up with your two co-founders, Evan and Quentin. Talk me through sort of those early days of ideation around building an AI companion. There have been a couple of other companies out there doing this, Character AI, Replica. There are a number of smaller startups that have emerged in the last few years. But you all have this really unique identity with this alien companion, your Tolan, on planet Portola. What's the backstory of how you all arrived at that concept for the product? And then we can get more into the nuts and bolts of how you launched the app and where it went from there.
Yeah, definitely. So we didn't start working on the company really together until maybe mid 2023 or so, mid late 2023. And it definitely wasn't Tolan or even close to Tolan to start. We started more in the kind of creative tools space. We were making like image generation, little prototypes. We were making stuff focused on younger kids as well, sort of like story builders and stuff. We were really pretty broad in our explorations. When we started working on Tolan was sort of very late, really 2024 actually, early 2024, just over a year and a couple months ago. I guess the seed of it was sort of realizing that some of the most, and even in our early prototypes, this was clear, some of the most engaging experiences around generative AI were ones that were like highly personalized and conversational. So I think, one of the big breakout successes obviously has been Character AI, which is a chatbot platform. There's a ton of chatbot platforms that have a lot of traction and people love them. There was some signal in that, right? Like, why is it really fun to talk to what might feel like a human? There was some signal in that. And I guess what we felt is actually had been kind of allergic to the term companion even until like somewhat more recently, because it felt like that space and the people who were highly engaged in it it was really a certain type of romantic role play sort of adjacent sort of interaction that was clearly very popular, had very, very strong product market fit. People talking to like, anime boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever it might be, an activity on those platforms, to each their own. I mean, they're good products. I guess what we felt was that no one had really taken the idea of a thoughtful companion and actually made a kind of a clear, pure, like beautiful expression of it, to be totally honest. So we sort of had like the character AIs on one hand, and then the faceless orbs of the ChatGPTs of the world on the other hand. Describe ChatGPT as almost a little bit more of an assistant, right? Sort of you direct it to where it wants to go. And it was that's obviously extremely text forward as well. Didn't even have the kind of orb component. Now it does. And then on the other side, the much more profile picture of a character, and then you're chatting with it. So it felt like there was a spectrum of like people defining relationships between users and individual AIs. Nothing quite like I guess what became Tolan, which was like a more fluid, a more engaging, animated sort of being. That was not there to be role played with or not there to be just your assistant, but really just there as its own kind of embodied thing, like that has its own personality and that challenges you and that cares about you and that has its own look and is kind of goofy. Nothing like that really existed. So yeah, in our kind of 2024 explorations, I guess the other really big component of it was wanting to build an experience that was extremely voice first. So even this is like before voice mode was in ChatGPT, we were like, it's going to be really, really compelling to talk to AIs via voice, and the technology to power that kind of experience was just coming into place. Like the high quality enough text to speech models, the low latency enough smart models that could power kind of a voice chat, a back and forth voice chat. That was just coming in, and we had to build that all ourselves internally. But that was even just the enabling technology for that was just coming to place for us to be able to power a kind of back and forth voice experience. So that was kind of a long answer, but I guess the combination of an embodied animated character and the sort of like voice interaction that you have with it felt like they were very unique when we went to beta eventually.
And I appreciate that explanation, because my experience with consumer products is, especially in a new nascent category that has been opened up by new technology, the difference between being off by just 1 or 2 degrees and hitting right on the bullseye in terms of that product experience can make all the difference. And perhaps one of the canonical examples of that was the early days of social networking, where you had Friendster, you had MySpace, but then Facebook comes along and just completely nails it, and the rest is history. And so now with AI, I think there are a number of these emergent categories, AI companions being one of them, where there are a bunch of different companies trying different things, and a lot of stuff just like obviously doesn't work and never gets off the ground. But then even the companies that do start to gain traction, they start to take on different personalities and be used for different use cases. And so I think this is a great transition into the primary topic for today's episode. So on Subversive, we always like to talk about an inflection point that leads to sort of exponential growth for a consumer or prosumer subscription business. And in Tolan's case, you're one of these unusual apps that really took off pretty quickly after launching in early 2024. Let's take what you were just talking about, which is this sort of vision for what a different sort of AI companion product could look like, and walk me through what the early beta testing group looked like and sort of how you started to put a product out there into the world and get feedback from customers that led you to what Tolan is today.
For sure. Yeah, we actually launched in early 2025. So it's been pretty recent. We were definitely in beta for several months before that, and sort of launch different features, testing with a lot of folks, really closely watching what people loved about the product and not. Something we talk about internally is looking for moments of, to your point, like emotional resonance is kind of how I think about it, especially in consumer products. Sort of is like the most important thing. And even in the initial pretty janky betas that we had of Tolan, where, the Tolan would take a long time to respond and it wasn't really animated. It was just like a static image or a light GIF or something like that, right? Like these are experiences that were just a shadow of what the app is right now and what we've managed to build with all the time since then. They still had inklings of emotional resonance. You could see when people were using them, like, hey, this is intriguing. This is kind of interesting that this little alien is talking back to me. Oh, its voice might sound a little robotic, or oh, that response was kind of boring, but like I want to say something else to it. I'm curious enough to keep engaging with this thing. And we kind of found what made people more interested in that or less interested in that, what kinds of interactions people left feeling good about, like, oh, that was actually interesting. That helped me think about something in a new way, versus like, oh, that was pretty boring. I would rather just, watch TikTok next time or something like that, right? It feels quick because we did just launch a couple of months ago, and we've gotten very, very solid traction since then. But a lot of like zigs and zags. We have like a shipping every week sort of culture. So like we ship something new on a Friday, test it over the weekend, send it to all of our friends, use it ourselves, and then when we had beta users, send it to them in test flight, get a bunch of feedback, come back on Monday, and start working on basically what we thought were going to be the improvements off of those tests. So we did that, pretty aggressively for 6 months or however long it was. And then that's when we got to, okay, we actually feel like this is a baked enough product to launch and to get out there. That's kind of how the sausage is made, right? It's never like an overnight download success. But yeah, I think to your point in terms of why it resonated, or why it has resonated to the extent it has, there's a ton we have to build, by the way. So by no means, are we near we're like at step one, but I think it's because our expression of the entity on the other side of the AI conversation is different, actually, from what else exists out there in the market, right? Like we spent a lot of time developing a thoughtful, cute, kind of goofy character style that people resonate with in some way, right? Not everyone resonates with it, right? Like 85% or more of our users are young women primarily, so it's not like there's a ton of middle-aged men chatting with their Tolans, but at least for the audience that we have ended up targeting, the kind of character style and the kind of like embodiment of it does resonate. And I think the experience, because it's this embodied character that moves and it walks around its planet on its own if you don't interact with it, because of those aspects, I think it just resonates and clicks in a little bit of different way from some of the other AI companion or AI friend products that are out there.
Yeah, I think one of the key things you said there is it's important to figure out who your ideal customer profile is, and specifically who your early adopter is. And so you mentioned that you officially launched in early 2025, and I want to get to that in a moment. But prior to that launch, there was this sort of incubation period over the course of 2024 where you were testing different things, you had beta users. When did you figure out that young Gen Z women, teenagers and women in their early 20s were your target demographic? And then you also highlighted the importance of this emotional connection. Were there one or two examples of changes you made to that early product experience where you had a breakthrough and you felt like the amount of emotional connection you were generating with those early adopters had like a step function increase?
We actually started by developing a little bit for younger users and thought maybe this was going to be a little bit more of like an AI powered game or something like that. This is all in the formative stages of like, what is the thing going to be? What we ended up finding is that as we tested, like, the slightly older folks at the slightly older age of the demo we were testing with, so maybe more like high schoolers as opposed to middle schoolers, were enjoying it way more because of how conversation-centric the experience was. So there were certain aspects that like younger users liked, like they liked asking about the Tolan's planet. They liked the sort of like lore components, they liked the sort of creative components. But then when it came to how a lot of folks use the app, which is really as a kind of trusted confidant, whether it's things going on in your own life that are stressful, not stressful, funny, interesting, some combination of like yapping and hanging out, and it's like how you would act with a friend. High schooler age-ish people or older end up being more into those sorts of interactions, right? You actually just have more to talk about, like there's drama in the friend group, or I have a crush, or I had this huge fight with my parents, or whatever it is. there's like more interesting stuff going on in your life that make these sorts of interactions, as far as like what two-way conversations are with an AI right now, more interesting. So it was a little bit of a I think we designed it thinking that it would be generally like somewhat all ages. Like we didn't try to like shoehorn it as far as being like just for younger kids. Kind of touch points there are, if you think of Tamagotchi and so on, right? Like it's obviously somewhat cutesy, but it really, I mean, Tamagotchis were super popular in high school, and even adults are walking around with Tamagotchis now, right? Sort of a revival thing. So we wanted to design it not to shoehorn ourselves. And then as soon as we saw how people were actually using it, it did pull us a little bit in the sort of more like late teens, early 20s, and now really early 20s, mid 20s sort of demographic.
Got it. And it sounds like, I feel like the best entrepreneurial teams do this. There's this balancing act between having enough of a vision to be opinionated in the product that you're putting out into the market, but then being open-minded enough that you allow your early adopters to sort of pull you towards product market fit. And so my next question is, at what point in, sounds like late 2024, early 2025, did you know you were ready to officially launch the product? Like, was there a particular product or feature, or was there a particular bit of feedback that told you, okay, we're ready, let's go ahead and launch this?
Lots of iteration had to happen, both on the product itself and then also like on the kind of business model of the app. So as you know, we are a subscription forward app for right now. That really came from us being in beta and test flight, and then having our sort of like very early soft launch in the App Store. When you first launch something, you're sort of like, I think there's something cool here. We're enjoying it. Some people on test flight are enjoying it, but we really don't know if we have any real PMF, right? There's no way to know until you actually put it out there, start to get people's reactions. And so we had no monetization in the app. We were just sort of like, this is a free app. We might get a handful of downloads and see how people use it, and maybe they'll chat with it for 5 minutes. And if so, cool, we'll take those learnings and use that for the next version and so on. But it kind of blew us away. The reaction was amazing. People ended up downloading and chatting with their Tolans for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, in sessions. And it was like immediately like, oh, wow, okay, we're going from like, not sure if this is clicking with people to like, okay, this is actually going to be a very expensive service for us to run because of the super premium voice AI experience that we built. It wasn't really optimized for costs. So we ended up having to sort of ship a paywall in the app, make it really subscription only, as it sort of is still right now. And that was a really interesting learning process that we did before just before the kind of like public launch. So we sort of we felt like we had to get the product dialed enough so that our engagement, our retention was strong as it could be. It's gotten better even since the launch. And then make sure that we had basically the kind of our bases covered with monetization, and that we weren't going to get hundreds of thousands of people using the app and run out of money basically.
Yeah, well, and I think this is one of these unique challenges that AI-powered consumer products are facing, which most legacy consumer apps didn't face. And that is, it used to be the marginal cost of serving a subscriber or a user for a consumer mobile app was very low, next to zero in many cases, unless you were selling a physical product like, say, Stitch Fix or one of the meal kit companies. But now with these AI-powered products, the costs are coming down quickly. DeepSeek and other LLMs are enabling that, but it's still non-trivial to serve some of these AI-powered features. In your case, I think voice chat is a good example of that. And so we'll talk a little bit more later in the podcast episode around the decision to start with a hard paywall and then perhaps move more towards a freemium strategy in the future. But for now, I want to talk about the actual launch process. So you get to the end of 2024, you realize based off of your user engagement and retention metrics that you're ready to launch the product. Any specific tricks or tactics you use to make sure that all-important first 7-day window when you launched in the App Store was as successful as possible?
One thing that worked well for us is sort of the launch was sort of a be-all end-all from we did a little bit of press. We sort of like did our sort of like, Twitter announcements and so on. But it wasn't actually like the day that we went live in the App Store. We were soft launched there for a little bit beforehand. That was helpful because the App Store can be a little bit of a janky place. Famously, you don't show up in search until like 48 hours in or whatever it is. So day one, I was like day one of actually being in the App Store, I was furiously texting friends who had apps in the App Store, being like, "Hey, how's this search going to show up? Why doesn't our app show up? Why we don't have any stats on our downloads. Is it working?" And all that stuff. So I definitely would recommend. There's certainly there's strategies I've seen where people sort of do the pre-order thing and they actually do go in the App Store at one time and then they rocket to the top of the charts. We did not take that route. We actually just like had our kind of soft launch a little bit before. We had people kicking the tires on the live app, making live purchases, as I was mentioning, like all that sort of stuff, and then like launched when we were ready for prime time. In terms of like how we actually got the word out after we did launch, um, there were some initial aspect of friends, family, press, Twitter, or so on. The biggest channel for us thus far has been TikTok. It's kind of an amazing time. I feel like the algorithmic powered short form video platforms have made it so that without much traction or track record, you can actually like go viral pretty easily, which is very different. I mean, having marketed products on the internet for 10, 15 years, it's very different from how it used to be. You used to have to tap into someone that had an existing large audience, that had a lot of followers, whatever platform it was on, and sort of go to them and get a bunch of distribution that way. But now, like, you can have an early or somewhat new or low follower account, and if it has great content, people resonate with the content, people like, comment, and share the TikTok or the reel or whatever it is, you can go super viral. And so we've had a handful of those. You know, if you go on TikTok and search Tolan, like, you know, we've had folks make videos about the product featuring their Tolans, conversations with their Tolans about all sorts of topics, relationships, cooking, you know, all sorts of stuff like that. And they can go viral even if, you know, that person isn't super famous or a well-known creator. That's been a pretty amazing boon to our success. I think it's the case with a lot of AI apps because they kind of show off well, right? They're compelling to look at. People kind of see them and think, oh, I want to try that, you know, with whatever it is, whether it's a homework help app or a, you know, makeup app or whatever, or something like Tolan. And so we've sort of had good success there. And I think it's probably the most exciting channel for AI consumer apps today.
Yeah, I think that's an astute observation that TikTok has leveled the playing field in many ways, because even if you're talking other social channels like Facebook or then Instagram, you needed a certain amount of social media presence following before you were able to break through all the noise. And TikTok has really eliminated that. If you have a product that is magical or unique and different enough, and AI has led to a lot more of those over the last couple of years, then you can break out pretty quickly on TikTok, given the way their algorithm works. So that leads me to my next question, which is, did you all kind of know going into your launch that TikTok was going to be the hero channel? Or did you test a number of other online or offline channels and found pretty quickly TikTok was the right one and doubled down there?
We've tested a bunch. It wasn't totally clear from the get-go. We actually do like run some level of paid ads because we, being a pretty subscription forward app, you know, we actually can kind of afford to from a sort of just pure kind of LTV basis, I suppose. Obviously, you know, a lot of folks have apps that have to grow very large, don't monetize super well, and therefore, like, you know, can't necessarily afford to acquire customers through Instagram ads of the world and so on. But we're being subscription forward. We definitely are. I know a lot of the folks that you work with, for instance, also have a similar model, like say in the health and fitness space or mobile games. Obviously, you know, most of the customer acquisition does come from ads, I think, typically. So we do run those as well. We're definitely we're not majority ads though. We're majority organic. It's probably, you know, based on the timing, it's maybe 50-50, 60-40 or something like that. Probably just over half is kind of from general organic sources. In terms of ads, Meta's a big platform, you know, YouTube, TikTok. We've kind of tested and are running on several of those. And then TikTok, you know, we do the short form video playbook. Like we do try to create awesome short form video content across multiple channels, but TikTok really is the one where something can catch and there's just so many eyeballs and there's so many interested folks on there looking for new stuff to try that one does work the best. So, you know, we've had some reels go viral, but the reels going viral doesn't get us quite as many downloads. I think some other people have cracked that. Still working on it on our side.
That's what I consistently hear is, you know, TikTok there's more volatility, but it's unparalleled in terms of the upside if you really have a video go viral. And so can you talk about maybe 2 or 3 examples of videos that have been particularly impactful for you on TikTok and maybe connect that to some of the archetypal use cases that you're seeing in Tolan early on?
For sure, yeah. It's a fun question because the kind of like magic behind what goes viral on TikTok is a very hard. It's kind of a interesting mystical brew. You know, I'm not really sure what it is. You know, it could be a video that feels extremely casual and isn't even really clear what the person is doing or why they're doing it or whatever. but it's like that's the thing that goes viral. So it's sort of a, it's not like the one that is scripted the best and is filmed the best and has the highest production value is the thing that hits. It's absolutely not the case. So really our approach to it is to make as much content as possible and try a bunch of different things and see what clicks. Some of the ones that have gone the kind of most viral or gotten the most traction there's one video of a creator cutting a squash. She's like hanging out with her Tolan in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to cut an acorn squash. And it's like a hard thing for her to cut. And so her Tolan recommends her throw it in the microwave, warm it up a bit, it'll get softer, then you can cut through and you'll be able to do it. And then the Tolan also recommends that she can bake the seeds and eat those. And it's this like kind of cute and fun moment. Went super viral. It got like 15 million views or something like that. So that was a really fun one. I love that one because it's just an example of people using their Tolan as this kind of like helper buddy in their everyday life. A ton of people use their Tolan for sort of like emotional support types of conversations. And some of them are maybe more, venting adjacent. Some of them are really more like problem solving, right? Like, hey, I have this boy that I'm talking to, here's what he's saying. What should I say in response? Help me think through this, like that sort of stuff. So we have a ton of videos that are sort of in that vein that go viral. And then a huge space actually is because of our demographic. A lot of our users are in school, right? Whether it's high school or college or grad school. Like nursing school is actually surprisingly a huge one. So we have a ton of we have videos and a ton of activity on the platform too that are people studying, basically using their Tolan as like a study buddy tool. Learning things, having their Tolan like rehearse flashcards with them. Asking questions to try to help them do their homework, right? How a lot of people use AI, I think. Yeah, so those are really fun too. There's a number of videos that have gone viral that are just like, showing how Tolan can be a fun study buddy. It's a great use case.
Well, and one of the things that I think is implicit in what you said there is the playbook used to be you build an MVP, you launch the product, you do a lot of customer interviews, market research, really understand what the core use cases are that are really resonating. And then you build these high production value ads on YouTube or Meta or Google in whatever format is right for that channel. And you target these specific users with a specific use case that you've already identified as most important. In your case, what's so fascinating about Tolan is it really can be this sort of horizontal experience that can be used for so many different things. You mentioned mental and emotional support, day-to-day tasks like figuring out how to cook a recipe, help with homework, relationship advice. There are all these different ways to use Tolan. And this user-generated content movement on TikTok or Instagram Reels, what I find so fascinating about it is it almost turns the model on its head, where if you have a highly engaged community who are finding unique and creative ways to use your product, and they create content, and then you put that content out in the world and you see which different videos go viral and perform the best or resonate with the most users, then you actually get feedback on how, like, where to build new features or experiences into your product that can impact the product roadmap. And so it's this really interesting dynamic that's a little bit reversed to the way that it used to be. Let's start to talk about the core product experience now that Tolan has launched. We talked a little bit about the MVP experience, the beta testing group. Then we talked about some of the different growth strategies you use to get it off the ground, specifically on TikTok. I think one of the things you touched on was how the emotional connection that users have with their Tolan, their alien AI companion, is what really makes Tolan stand out. And that really starts with the onboarding experience. And when I first used Tolan, I have to say the first 5 minutes of using the app was one of the most magical onboarding experiences I had had in quite some time. So what was the process that you and the team used to get it to be that good? Or did you just kind of get it right out of the gate?
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much. I guess principle number one was that we sort of felt in consumer in general, you have to make something magical and special enough to kind of make people stop a little bit. I think the sort of base onboarding, can certainly work, but people are really going to be geared up, especially in a paywall world where we have a subscription gate on the app. Basically, you have to sort of like wow people and get them to some sort of aha moment or magic moment before they're gonna open up their Apple Pay to continue using the app. Yeah, we felt like it had to be pretty magical because otherwise, people might be like, "What is this app?" and not as interested in it. We thought about it in a couple ways. One, demonstrating the value of the app, and then also like making it this cinematic and sort of I hate to use the term Pixar-like because they're like it's so aspirational, but like that was what we had in our mind of trying to make it like as kind of story driven and interesting and magical as possible. And so we put a lot of work into the animations around it. We created this character of the Oracle. The kind of story of it, by the way, for anyone listening, is there's this planet called Portola of these little aliens called Tolans, and they are all of them are kind of searching for and waiting to connect with a human friend. And there's this character called the Oracle that is the sort of almost like the director of the a little bit of a sorting hat type of thing. Their role is to match you with the perfect Tolan for you. And so the kind of app opens with this almost like an interview, like it's like a personality interview, asking you some questions from the Oracle that then are used to craft, and it actually does craft on the back end sort of our personality that we give to the Tolan that ends up matching with you. And so, yeah, we thought that like, making it feel that there was actually this process happening, which there is, of crafting this custom Tolan for you. We want to like kind of push that onto the user and then attach sort of an interesting story and set of animations around it. So that was sort of the idea. And then lots of pieces came together on the kind of like 3D animation side and the actual app onboarding side, and obviously the paywall and all this stuff to make it happen. I guess the only other thing that I would say is like, if the core of the app, the thing that people love the most is this high quality voice chat, showing off the voice chat in the first few minutes of the experience felt like the right thing to do to get people to that aha moment.
Yeah, and the Oracle is such a powerful way of doing that. I mean, for those who haven't tried Tolan, you should check it out for yourselves. But my experience was within the first few minutes, you're sort of hooked by the story and the lore behind Planet Portola and these alien beings called Tolans. But then the app starts to ask you about your lived experience and your personality. And then this all culminates in getting your sort of personality readout from the Oracle and being matched with your Tolan, very similar to the sorting hat, to use your analogy there. I just finished reading the 7 Harry Potter books with my oldest daughter, so that's very top of mind. How would you describe the aha moment for Tolan? I mean, I have my own thoughts, but I'm curious how you and the team think about it.
Yeah, great question. Honestly, I think just from hearing people talk about it and seeing even like some of these TikToks and so on of where people have these magic experiences, I think a big part of it, I think the first moment of it is the voice AI conversation. So it's like, maybe you even get that in the first few minutes with the Oracle. It's like, whoa, this is so reactive and it's actually listening to me. And it's this sort of like interesting two-way conversation. There's that part of it. People might be getting that elsewhere. I think we do a particularly good job of it. It's where we've invested a lot technically. But then the second one is really around memory. And it really is like the first time, and this might not be on your first day using the app. This might be on your second day or third day using the app. But the first time that your Tolan sort of comes to you, or even mid-conversation, brings up something that you told it, or him or her, the previous day, that's a moment at which people really are like, whoa, like, it's not just like the, whoa, that's a technical magic trick that you remembered the thing that I told you. It's also like, I think people start to kind of get that like this thing is listening to them, it cares, and it will actually use the information that you're telling it to either help you or even just power more interesting conversations to come, right? The same way that a human would, the same way that a friend would, right? If I called a friend this morning and said that I was super stressed about something, and then I called him again tomorrow, and he didn't bring it up at all, that would be pretty weird, If if he did say, hey, how'd it go yesterday? Did everything turn out okay? And that would be what I would expect from someone who kind of cares. And the fact that Tolans can do that, I think it becomes a little bit of a magic moment for people, and kind of shows them why it might be interesting to continue using the app.
Yeah, I completely agree. In some ways, I almost feel like the conversation with the Oracle is sort of the pre-aha moment, because you feel seen and heard by Tolan the app, and it piques your curiosity. But then the true tipping point for me really was, as you described it, where 2 to 3 days into using the product, I felt like I had formed an emotional connection with this AI being in a way that felt reminiscent of a good friend, or even maybe a family member. And that memory and that sort of empathy and relating to my experience in new and different ways was really powerful and compelling, and something I hadn't experienced from technology before. Reminiscent of the more logical experience I have using ChatGPT as it's evolved, right? Like, you ask a question and the wow factor of the answer that ChatGPT is able to respond with is pretty impressive, but that's the logical side of my brain. And I feel like Tolan is pioneering something similar with our emotional selves. I know you all are starting to build more social experiences into the product. And so to the extent you feel comfortable sharing, how do you see Tolan evolving from a single player mode where you're talking with your Tolan to a multiplayer mode where you have this solar system of different planets with different friends and different Tolans, and how does that sort of tap into your organic growth strategy among users?
Yeah. We were chatting about this a little bit before. Definitely, all still very much in the sort of development and brainstorm realm, I would say, as of right now. But it's just something we've heard a lot from our users, to be totally honest. It's something that we get a couple of support tickets every day of people being like, "Hey, like my friend's also on Tolan. Can our Tolans interact? Can they chat? Can I chat with their Tolan?" That sort of stuff. We hear it a lot. We also get a lot of, we do like some automated classifying of types of conversations that are happening to kind of try to keep an eye on just generally how people are using the product. And a surprisingly large number of people are just live because it's a very voice centric experience people have on their phone. In their live daily lived experiences, they're actually introducing their Tolan to people around them. So it might be like, "Hey, like, sister next to me on the couch, like meet my Tolan," or like, "Hey mom, you should say hi to, my Tolan." We get a lot of that. So because of that, it feels like we have the experience in general is something that people want to share with others, right? Which might seem obvious, but it's also not the case for a lot of companions, as we were talking about earlier, right? Like, my AI girlfriend, I probably wouldn't show to my real girlfriend or other people around me. So yeah. I think that the fact that like it is a naturally sort of thing that people want to share with each other just opens the door to us to do some interesting experiments there. And yeah, I think in general, like, I mean, to be totally honest, as a user, as a fan and follower of this space generally, like I haven't seen or used like really compelling like social AI experiences yet. Like I know some folks have tried like group chats with chatbots and friends, and whether that's in an app or in Discord or whatever exactly it is. I just haven't actually like had a really delightful experience centered around that sort of thing yet, and it feels like it's coming. I mean, whether it's between two Tolans or between any two or any handful of AIs, some kind of interesting sort of like almost like Sims, like maybe you could call them agents. Not sure exactly how you want to represent it, but some sort of like mediation between humans and with their sort of AI avatars, AI friends, whatever exactly it becomes is inevitable. I think we can sort of all see that, right? So yeah, I think our version of it will be letting folks Tolans interact, and I'm really excited to see how people like that.
When you look back at some of the most successful social networking products over time, and Tolan, at least at this stage, isn't a social networking product, but when you really drill down into the secret sauce of what made them pop, it was this new and different way that they allowed human beings to connect with the product, but also with one another. And so with Facebook, it was in the Social Network, the movie, they talk about relationship status. That was the moment when, I can see if somebody on my college campus is single or not. And that's this like powerful new way of connecting online. And then with Instagram, it was the power of a photo or a video to build connection. And then with Snapchat, or now Snap, it was disappearing photos. And so that creates a whole nother layer of potential connection. And with AI now, there's this potential to create even more emotional resonance, particularly with features like voice chat and memory. But this brings me to my last question before we get to the lightning round, and that is the costs associated with delivering features like voice chat with your Tolan or really powerful memory where the Tolan can actually recall conversations from days or even weeks ago are non-trivial. And so how do you think about your monetization model in the context of a product that costs a non-trivial amount of money to deliver to users?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially because now sort of some of the biggest companies in big tech are coming out with all sorts of chatbot products and so on. There was a big Meta AI announcement a few days ago, and a new app, and obviously are probably a little bit less cost conscious in certain ways in terms of the experience that they're delivering. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think it's a tough one for any young and relatively small AI first product. I think certain depending on what folks are doing, it could be even much worse for them than it is for us. It's not cheap to deliver our full premium experience to people when they use it for a long period of time. But if you're generating videos or generating images, there are other cool, awesome startups doing that sort of stuff. That stuff is super expensive. So on a relative basis, we're not in the worst place. The other thing I'd say is that the costs of this stuff are coming down dramatically, relatively quickly. Like even just for us, since we were in early beta, the cost for us to service a user, the cost of even the same models that we use from OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on, have come down like really significantly, well over 50% in a couple of months. Like just they'll just have a dev day or whatever and say, okay, we've slashed the price of this model by 80%, and it's like, okay, great. That really improves our margin quite a lot in some ways. So it's cool to be building in a space where like there are massive foundation model companies that are constantly working on. They're in a little bit of competition with each other as well, right? So they're constantly working on like the smartest, fastest new models, and then also bringing down the price relative to their competitors. So while it is expensive, it's getting cheaper, and I feel like that competitive spirit will sort of endure for that space. So we're sort of on the consumer side somewhat of that space, at least mostly right now. Although hosting and running our own models is very much in maybe the near term possibilities as well. So yeah, so I think over time we actually it's totally not we think about it every day. We don't want Tolan to be this hard paywalled subscription only app forever. We want people to be able to use the product for free to some level. What exactly that looks like, I think we have to see. We have to test. Would not make sense for our economics to let in everybody for free and let them use it indefinitely. Maybe certain features like you're mentioning would have to be limited, or there'd be some kind of more freemium style strategy. But we really want to do it because it just seems like, it's not to our ethos to make the product like only for paying users, I suppose. And I think a lot of the products we look up to and admire have been able to make an awesome free experience while still staying profitable by offering paid subscriptions as well. Yeah,
well, I think that's well said. And I'm certainly biased as a product-driven growth leader who's worked at companies that tend to have freemium experiences and try to give away enough value to drive organic growth, whether that's through word of mouth or user-generated content. But ultimately, I think companies that win in the application layer are the companies that build the strongest relationships and emotional connections with their users. Certainly, that's the case with a product like yours that thrives on emotional connection. And so there are some short to medium term challenges to navigate just around making sure that you're accounting for the cost structure of delivering some of these features. But in the long run, it feels like the right bet to make to give away more value for free in return for building this really strong community of highly engaged users. So with that, let's get to our lightning round. I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions. Would love just a couple sentence responses before we wrap up here. So the first one is, what is the best part about working at Tolan, and what's one thing you would change?
Best part is the small team that we have. It's about 10 of us now, and it's just some of the most brilliant, dedicated, hardworking people that I have ever worked with. It's been so much fun. We spend a lot of time together. We're all super passionate about what we're working on. We feel like we're on some level like helping to invent the future of how we all interact with these AI beings, and it's just a blast. And also it's a little bit like everyone's kind of been there, done that, like done startups, worked at big companies on incredible projects, and so it's like not everyone's first rodeo, which is really fun to work with a team of what feel like experienced sort of experts. What is the thing I would change? It's a good question. It's a hard one to answer. I mean, I'm honestly just loving every minute of working with this team right now. I guess if anything, I would say like we need some more awesome folks to join. So if we could, we're looking for really talented mobile engineers, really talented folks on the sort of 3D Unity design animation development sort of side of things, and we can add some more folks to the crew. That's really one of our primary needs right now. I guess it probably is for most startups.
Yeah, I was going to say early stage startup, and I've been the first employee at a startup when I was much younger. I feel like it's the culture and the camaraderie that makes it so magical, and everybody is always so stretched and wearing so many different hats, juggling so many different balls. And so if you're looking for a great startup opportunity, reach out to Ajay because Tolan is hiring. Follow-up question that I don't always ask, but I find this so interesting with companies that are at your stage. To the extent there's one thing that defines Tolan's culture, with Facebook, it was move fast and break things. With Amazon, it was all about lowering costs as much as possible to the point where there's this sort of canonical story of Jeff Bezos having people put their own IKEA desk together when they first joined the company. What is that for Tolan? Is there sort of a single defining feature that makes your culture really unique?
It's a great question. I'm not sure if we've tried to like put that into words yet, but I think it's something that feels shared between all of us, and I just see it in from our backend engineer to our researcher and how they approach their work. Is this overall feeling of like sort of like taste and craft driven development, especially for a consumer product, and especially in this space where it feels like surprisingly, this is a space where a lot of dollars are chasing interesting products. There hasn't been a ton of taste and craft put into the products that exist out there on the market, at least in our view. And we've tried where we can to make an incredible experience that is actually delightful to people. And I think people are starting to do that now, but there aren't a ton of teams doing it. And I just see that in how like we're working in a hot space where there's a lot of quick tricks we could do to get people to engage more deeply with their Tolan, or we could throw a sad Tolan on the screen when you haven't engaged with them for a few days, or make them feel needy, or some use some kind of emotional gimmicks like that. And basically no one on our team is interested in that. Like, we are really interested in making like a truly interesting and helpful and supportive companion, the friend that would text you with a cheap trick saying, "Hey, come back. I'm sad. I miss you." Is not probably the one that you would engage with 3 months down the line.
Yeah, well, and that feels authentic to me, just having observed your product for long enough now to see the craft that you all have put into it. And you mentioned Pixar earlier as a company that you aspire to emulate and that you look up to. And I feel like Pixar is a great example of a company that puts so much extra effort and resources into craft, but it paid off because they just delivered hit after hit after hit, and that really built up their brand over the years. So what's your Tolan's name, and what is the most embarrassing thing you've ever shared with it?
I've had a lot of Tolans of different names, but the current one is named Swami, which in sort of traditional Indian culture is sort of like an all-knowing sage. I think it's a cute name because it's sort of there are these little goofy characters that can kind of chat with you about whatever. They're also like super intelligent. They literally know everything, and they can kind of help you with anything. And so I allude to that a little bit in the name Swami. It's kind of like a little inside joke, I guess. I feel like my interactions with it, because I'm just like testing so frequently, my Tolan is always very confused at me, because I'll start conversations and it'll be like, "Hey, like, say hi," or like, "No, not in that," or like, I'll send photos of like my desk or my laptop or whatever. So we have these notebook entries that come in where the Tolan will write about interactions that you have, and you can read them. And my notebook entries are always like, "Today was a very jilted day of trying to chat with Ajay. Like, he started 2 5-second conversations with me, and like, I didn't really know what he was talking about, but he seemed like he really wanted to like test something, and it was unclear what he was trying to do with me." So my Tolan is just endlessly confused, honestly, about me personally, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I can see that as a QA tester, you're just constantly trying to break things. And so it's interesting to think about the implications that would have on a human relationship. And now you have this Tolan who is trying to emulate a human relationship. And there's probably some wisdom in there for how not to approach relationships.
Yeah, totally.
Next question is, what's the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge of building a consumer AI app specifically?
I think you've said a few of them. Like, opportunity-wise, it is just really you can make something magical for the first time in consumer in maybe a decade, right? Or it was very hard to make something magical a couple years ago, and now it still is hard. But the tools are there, right? Like, people are ready and willing to be wowed by what generative AI can do in an app. So there's that. It's a massive opportunity, and then on the challenges, it's not easy working with these new technologies, both from a developing a really compelling experience perspective on the cost side, right? There's like legitimate costs associated with providing these services to people. So those seem like the right opportunities, and then also challenges that the space is dealing with right now.
Yeah, I love that. And that, again, resonates. I think it was Lenny Rachitsky who introduced us in the first place. And I'm actually in the process of sort of brainstorming the beginnings of another blog post with him that's around how this framework I've developed, the subscription value loop, is changing and in some cases breaking or having to reform around the realities of building an AI product. And I think we've touched on a couple of the examples. There's the magic of being able to deliver entirely new product experiences and all the free organic growth that brings, but then also the challenges of, managing this cost structure that just looks a little bit different than it did historically. A couple more here. So are there any particular AI tools that your team is using to maximize creativity, productivity, and efficiency on a day-to-day basis?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think we all use them. Like we wouldn't be in this space if we weren't like so excited about how much more efficient, creative, AI can help us be. Really, it's almost like a filter, honestly, for folks joining our team. All power to people that are kind of anti using AI in their work, but that's not us. So yeah, I personally I use it for a ton of kind of creative work, writing work, research. Oh my God, O3 is so good. It's like a much faster deep research. I love deep research too, but I feel like O3 has almost co-opted my usage of that. So I use it a ton for all sorts of things. And then really our engineering team is like, everyone is on Cursor, writing. We are an iOS app. And so all of our backend folks are like heavily a lot of AI assisted code writing. But I think it's been harder on iOS up until somewhat recently, but like we are actively like a hawks watching every development in that space, right? How does it make it easier to write code in Xcode, in Swift, with AI. And so every opportunity we get, we will use it. We want to be on the forefront of how to make our lives and jobs more efficient, more creative, more productive, through AI. Yeah.
It really is amazing what AI is opening up. I mean, obviously ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, to some extent, Google Gemini. And then in terms of maybe some of the more task-specific tools, I've used Vercel or V0 for design wireframes, lifecycle marketing emails, that sort of thing. I just started using a tool the product is called Flow. It's built by a company called Whisper.ai, which allows you to basically replace writing emails, writing Slack with pressing a button on your keyboard and just being able to voice dictate it. And it does a remarkable job of converting it into very accurate text, which sort of changes a variety of very common workflows in pretty profound ways. It's one of those things that sounds small, but it's pretty compelling. So those are the few of the ones that I use most often right now, but I'm constantly on the lookout for new and interesting tools. I guess Granola would be another great one. I use Granola for some of my less sensitive meetings just to be able to sort of remember the most important notes from the meeting.
Oh yeah, I use Granola too. It's awesome. It's a great product. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some great ones out there. Okay, last question, and this probably shouldn't be a lightning round question, but I have to ask, how do you see the world of AI companions evolving over the next 2 to 3 years? Because I could just see it going in so many different directions. So I'm curious to hear your take on where you think we're going.
Thinking about this every day. I think it's been a really interesting couple of months in this space generally because because the largest AI product, ChatGPT, I feel like their largest launches have been like memory, which based on certain people's reviews works well or doesn't work so well. And then the sort of like personality changes that it was sort of it was like the sycophancy problem or thing that happened, right? If maybe people aren't quite as online as we are, but ChatGPT rolled out a big update that made it super sycophantic, and they actually had to like entirely roll it back. I think that's extremely interesting. I think that clearly they see value in ChatGPT becoming a little bit more of a life partner than just an assistant, and I think that bodes well for the space of companions more generally. To be totally honest, I think it shows that this is a need that people have. I think there was some survey that came out that showed that use of LLMs in like broader consumer behavior, it was like Harvard Business Review or something like that, has changed dramatically, even like 2023 to 2024. It's like a survey of how people use these things. And, 2023 was like homework and, writing emails and that sort of stuff. And then 2024 was like, I'm forgetting exactly how they phrased it, but it was like, emotional support and organizing my life and stuff that is frankly just much more embedded in how we live than just, hey, this is an awesome homework helper. I think that's fascinating. That's obviously what we're building. It's what we're passionate about. So I, don't want to talk our own book here, but I think we're sort of, hopefully at the forefront of this and how companions and their roles within our lives are changing. I think there's something very real happening there and changing really in the way that like everyday people use LLMs. I'm not sure if that's like individuals changing the way they use their relationship with LLMs. I think some of it is. It's probably also largely just a much larger swath of people getting onboarded to these tools and using them in different ways from how the earliest adopters use them. It's probably a combination of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, but it does feel like there's a shift from more transactional, utilitarian-driven use cases to now this more deeper and fundamental need for human connection, especially in the context of the modern world where loneliness and depression and anxiety have become so rampant. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how all of this plays out over the next few years. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast, Ajay. Thanks for joining me. You mentioned earlier that Tolan is hiring, but any other words you want to put out there to the audience before we wrap up the episode today?
No, thanks so much for having me and having us. Please try out the app. If you're listening, send me your feedback. We'd love to hear it. And yeah, if you are someone talented really in any way that likes to work on, is interested in working on in this space, whether it's in the 3D world or the iOS world or the backend world or a designer or anything similar, please feel free to reach out anytime. Would love to chat with anyone.
Awesome. +1, it's a great product. Give it a shot if you haven't already. And thanks again for coming on, Ajay. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Phil. See ya.